Welcome back to the Built on Air podcast. It is good to be back with the crew again. You guys left me solo last week. I was all alone. It's good to have you back, but we survived. So good to have everybody in. We are in season 24, episode 7 of the Built on Air podcast, and have an exciting show for you. So before we jump into it, last week there was a big event, and Camille was there. Camille, give us a rundown of Airspace and how it went.
So Airspace LA, it was a kind of a split event where the focus was AI for the majority of it. But one half of the event, you could do a build-a-thon. So they gave you some prompts in advance. I think there were either 4 or 5 different categories that you could compete against. And if you won, you got a cash prize as well as like a WWE style belt. That's always fun. And then the other half of the event was more like hearing from various different Airtable customers. And it's LA, so basically everyone there was from either a studio or from some sort of music group. So a lot of familiar faces on my end. But there was a lot of focus on using AI natively within Airtable, as well as a little bit of talk about if you use, say, Claude to integrate with Airtable and you're not using Omni directly. They did have a sneak peek of a new Airtable product called Canvas, which is nice. It's like the next level of an interface designer almost, where it will build a full like website, but different from some of the previous generation tools that Airtable or Airtable's parent company has released. It allows you to click on items on the page and tweak them directly rather than having to regenerate the whole canvas all over again. So that was nice, and attendees of the event were taken off of the wait list. I'm not sure when more general availability of Canvas will be, but that part was interesting.
I actually got taken off the wait list yesterday and played with it for a couple minutes, so it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, we might have it on maybe a future episode. It looked like it could do some good things, but it was also really slow. But it also could have been because I was in a room with hundreds of other people all using the internet at once. So
Yeah, we might have to do a new episode with it. It's interesting the approach they're taking with it. I'm curious how it'll play out.
yeah, they have more and more products under their belt that are not strictly Airtable. So you wouldn't get to Canvas from airtable.com, I don't think. That might just be because it's still, in a closed beta. Maybe it will become more closely integrated with the product, or it might be like HyperAgent, which is its own standalone item. Or it could be like Product Central, which is Airtable, but not really.
Yeah. Yeah, this one's tied more to Airtable. Like to log in, you have to use your Airtable login, and it automatically has access to the bases that your login has access to. So yeah, it's much more tied in. Whereas HyperAgent, I don't even think has a connector. It might have a connector there.
It has a connector, but it's considered a completely different like login.
Yeah. So cool. The keynotes, Howie. Any highlights from the keynotes?
Um, I mean, yes and no. I thought it was a little funny because the beginning was, I distinctly remember they played like a short little intro video, and it was like it took a generation to build the steam train, and it was really harping on the speed of the growth of technology. And then it was like, now let's talk about AI for about 6 hours. Um, a lot of the presentations towards the beginning, before the sort of build-a-thon portion began, focused on specifically recent adjustments that Airtable has made to their own platform to support some use cases. And then if you wanted more deep dive into what some of those use cases could be, that's what the second half of the event was for.
Gotcha. Cool. Very good. Did they announce if they're doing another one anytime soon?
I thought I saw a similar event on their website, but I could be mistaken.
Yeah, I didn't see another airspace one because I think they called the one in New York airspace as well, or is that just?
I think maybe they called there. I've seen some recently called Builder Base that they've been doing, and the one in Boston that I'm going to is
Part
called
of a bigger event, right?
Yeah, it's part of Boston Tech Week, but it also had a Build with Airtable AI Workflow Hackathon. Yeah, so nothing fancy special for the name there, but
yeah,
Builder Base, I've heard.
Very good. That's a good update. So yeah, if anybody out there that went and have any feedback or comments, let us know how it was for you. And they had a build-a-thon. And do you know what the winning application did?
Now I should, because I know one of the guys, but can't say that I do. I'm sure it was impressive.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, that's a good update. So for today's show, Camille is going to walk us through a deep dive on forms and automations and how to create subrecords using native forms. So with that, let me change our screen up here. Let's go this style. And do you want to share your screen again? I think you have to share it. I get timed out.
Whoops.
Let's get this again. There we go.
All right. And before I get into it, none of these options are good, but I thought it was worthwhile talking about what your options were if you wanted to do something like this. So again, we're kind of talking about having sub-records when you're submitting an Airtable form. And I prepared a couple of different versions of things that you could do. And the base that we're in is on a team plan. So basically everyone should be able to do all of the following. I also try to think of it from the perspective of, are the people filling out the forms part of your team or are they external folks? So not having to pay for a license to submit information. There's pros and cons to each approach. And again, none of them are good, but all of them are somewhat viable. So the example I have is a pretty basic order form where one order might contain several items and each item might have a varying amount of quantity. And that's why you might want to have sub-records. You could capture that nuance and add up the total price of the order and things like that. The rest of my base is blank. So if I go to my forms, I have a couple of different forms. I will go through them one at a time. And the first few demos, because they are set up the way that they're set up, anybody who's not a collaborator in the base should be able to complete this. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put this form in the chat for, it's not letting me. How do I do this? So I got a streaming platform. I'm not used to it yet. Yeah. Allie and Dan, if you don't mind filling out this order form at the same time I'm doing so, you'll continue to see my screen as I'm doing it. The first sort of idea I had was you have one form for the order and you have a second form for your line items. So I have it turned on where it knows who you are as you're filling out the form, and that's important because what I'm basically saying is everybody who fills out the form has one cart. So I can keep adding more and more products to my cart as I go. That's one. And I can submit another response. Maybe I want a hoodie and I want 10 of those. And then I'll add my last one, which is a hat. Maybe I want 15 hats. And when I'm done, I can go back to that first form and I can confirm my cart. So what this is doing is it's filtering a list of records that I've called carts behind the scenes that are tied to my user account, so I can only select my cart. And I did this because otherwise you can't really add up the total cost of your order before you submit it. If I did it a couple of other ways. So I'm going to hit 3 products, $9.20, that's my cart. I'm going to hit submit. And then now that that's in there, after a second or two for my automations to complete, you'll notice that I have 3 completed orders, each with 3 different line items. And here's what everyone ordered. So I was able to capture with this method the quantity, the total price for each of the different products, and everybody, their cart didn't conflict with anyone else's, even though we all ordered from the same limited set of products. And the way that kind of works is when you submit a line item record, I have an automation that creates a cart record that's tied to the same user account, and it just links all of the line items together. And when someone submits an order, it finds the cart associated with what you clicked on the form, because again, you do have to select, this is the wrong form. You do have to select the cart that you want to select. So I already know exactly which cart to pick. And you can kind of see it working in real time. Here's my cart. I'm going to submit again. And what we should see is that the line items are taken out of my cart and attached to the order. If I go back here, you can see my new order with just that one item attached to me. It knows exactly who to associate it with it. What that automation looks like is when a form is submitted, the add to cart one, I'm making sure, does this person who just submitted the form already have a cart? If so, then just stick this new line item as part of the cart. If not, create a cart with that line item. And as long as someone is not rapidly submitting the form, and I think I was going, relatively quickly. As I was creating my line items, it should do this without conflict. It's a possibility, but the odds that someone is going that fast that it completes before this automation is relatively slim, unless you have quite a few people filling out the form at once, calling that out. And then the second automation needed to make this work is when you submit an order. I'm saying, okay, well, give me all of the carts for this person, basically the same find record step. And then we are linking the order that was just submitted to those line items. And then for the cart, we're basically just clearing it out. That is option 1. Option 2 is my least favorite, but still technically viable. Let's say that you don't want 2 separate forms to do this, and you still don't want to pay for licenses for someone to fill out sub-records. What you could do is you could have a form that's set up where you have just a long text field and you hope that people fill out their order sheet or whatever you want to call it in the correct format. And you might have a link to what your product catalog might be. So I could say, if I want a hoodie, I want that item order and I want 8 of those. And I want a hat and I also want 8 of those. I don't want a third item, so I would get rid of it. So after that's submitted, if I go back to view my data, that's the new order that I just submitted, number 12. I now have 2 line items. I go to my 2 line items, my hat and my hoodie, 8 items each. This one, I made use of the generate structured data. I've done this before using a script that would basically regex match whatever you put in the form. And if it matched the pattern I'm expecting, great, I'd be able to parse it. If not, it would just ignore it. For this particular demo, I said, let's give the generate structured data prompt a try. So the prompt I gave it was, when a form is submitted, parse out the following text string as an array of items containing a product ID and quantity, where the product ID and quantity of each item is separated by an X with a space on either side. And then you insert that field. The schema that I had it output was an array called items. Each item within the item array is an object containing a product ID, which is a string, and a quantity, which is a number. And then that does, in fact, create an array, which means you could use it in conjunction with the repeat action in automations. Just a friendly reminder that this loop or repeated action group can work for any array. It does not have to be a find record step. And then from there, I am just creating a record in line items where the order is the order that submitted the form, and then product ID and quantity. This is my least favorite, specifically because it relies on people kind of filling it out in the way that you hope. I'm sure with sort of more thought behind it, you can come up with a format that you're expecting people to put into that text box that is really easy for people to, work with, but you introduce a level of risk there.
Well, I wonder, what would it take to allow them to, like, just natural language say, like, I want 3 hats and 4 hoodies?
Well, I mean, yes, that I feel like specifically not using a script and using the AI step for this part, you probably could do something with that. But then if we're talking about natural language, if I say I want 5 hats, but I have more than one type of hat in my catalog, I don't want to someone order the wrong item for somebody. So I would recommend some sort of SKU or item ID being passed along with it. I went with the record ID because then I could just paste it directly in. But of course, if you had a SKU instead, you would have a find record step here and say, well, give me the product that has this SKU so I could attach it to the order.
Mm-hmm. I wish there were more to support what Dan was saying. We now have deep match available as a linked record AI agent type field, but we don't really have the same equivalent in terms of a find records or automation step. Mm-hmm. So it's actually really difficult to find the best match of all of these records while keeping that token usage small, if that makes sense. But I'm looking forward to improvements on that front.
And you do bring up a good point about token usage. This obviously takes credits to run. Now, it doesn't take a whole lot of credits because it's not doing a whole lot of things, but that is something to consider if you're going to go with this approach, especially if you have a much more complicated form than what I was presenting. I kept it absolute bare minimum. There's no concept of where you're shipping it to. Do these items need to ship together versus these items? None of that is in there. So there's a certain point where if you need even more complexity, the token usage that you might need out of this particular step that will parse out the data, it might get more costly over time. So it's just, this is really an exercise of if you had to stay in Airtable and just use Airtable, what could you do? And the reason I'm doing this on the team plan is because some things are significantly easier if you're on business or enterprise, but there's no challenge in that. So here I am.
Yeah.
And I do have a third option, but that does require people have an Airtable editor license to contribute. But I might have just cut someone off. Was someone saying something?
No, go for it.
Great. So option 3 is an interface-based approach where the general idea is similar to the first one, where here's my product catalog. I want a mug, and I'm going to add to cart. It's going to ask me for my quantity. Let's say I want 6 mugs. This is the UI that is not great, but this is what I just sort of threw together to, prove the theory. For those who are unfamiliar, Los Angeles just expanded its D line for Metro Rail, and they're selling merchandise that says Ride the D. So I'm using that as my example. Let's say I want 4 hoodies. So with that in place, now I can go to my cart. Here are the items in my cart. I don't have it enabled, but I could click to edit each of these and say remove from cart or up the quantity or do whatever. I didn't for this demo. If my cart looks great, I'm going to place my order. You have to have at least one field on the form. So here's the order date. And I'm going to hit create. And what that should do is similar to the first implementation, it should take all of my things that are in my cart and move them out of the cart and attach them to the order that was created by the form. Now, this is more simplified because unlike using a traditional Airtable form, if I wanted to have that review your items before you submit, I could just go to an interface page to do that. I don't need to associate them with a record, so I could show it to the users of well, here's your total cost for your cart overall. So this implementation doesn't actually use the cart table. What it just does is it just has line items that are tied to me because it has the created by field, but it doesn't have an order associated with it. And we'll go through the automation in a second, but here's every order I've done all from today, but this is the one that I just submitted, lucky number 13, with 6 and 4 as my quantities. And I'll go really quickly to the last automation I have in here, which is the simplest of the bunch, I think. When an order is created, find line items where the created by is the same person who created the order, and order is empty. That part is important. We don't want to associate previous line items with the current order. We want things that are in my cart associated with it. And then you just update that order with the list of unlinked line items. And there you go. So again, this implementation doesn't need the cart table that I had in place before.
Nice. Yeah, I'm wondering with the new Canva being able to build your interface, how that works. I didn't dig deep enough to know how they're gonna, if there's any hints on how they're gonna do pricing or anything. But yeah, it'll be curious because in theory you could recreate that interface in Canva and be able to get around it. I don't know. I'm sure they're thinking about that.
Yeah, I think of the 3 options that I just went through, the interface-based approach is the one that I use the most in my day-to-day because in my day-to-day, I am on the enterprise plan. So we're paying for the licenses anyway. And you just get more functionality that way. It is closer to your typical add to cart experience that you would have on any website. And with something like Canvas that can replicate or create basically a regular old website, the UI of it all could be a lot smoother and simpler than what I've presented here. This is kind of me looking at how can you do it using just basic Airtable. And then if you're using an interface, and depending on your setup, you could have Omni create a custom extension for your interface that makes the UI more straightforward and I'll say typical for the order experience of it all. Or you could code it yourself if you so chose. But there's a couple of additional things that you could do to make the experience a little bit smoother. But from a functionality standpoint, it doesn't really take much under the hood in order to accommodate this general use case. Again, still not great, but it could be worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I really liked your first example. I found that really creative. I hadn't considered that. At first I was wondering if the direction you were going was you'd pick the line items that you created individually, but I kind of like how you bundled them up into one cart, so you just have to click one button.
Yeah, going back to that first example, I'll just add a couple more. I did it this way because I didn't. What if you ordered 10 things? Then you'd have to pick 10 line items, and that's not great. And then you still don't have well, what's my total for the order? You don't have that if you don't bundle it up using that extra cart table. And technically speaking, you don't necessarily have to have this on where they need an Airtable account. You would have to include enter your account ID or enter your email as a field on both of these two forms. The reason I have this turned on to circumvent that is because there's the fewest possible fields that you can include on this form to get it to work. Now, going back to complexity, this would typically be my subtotal, but then there would be tax or VAT, and then there might be shipping. There might be a couple more things that you might do. So this is probably not the total for your order. I haven't really considered how to reconcile that necessarily. But again, this is the most limited probably of the three approaches, but it does kind of get you in relatively few clicks, being able to have as many line items as you want kind of bundled together in one go. With this implementation needed 2 automations to do it, but no scripting and no AI.
Yeah. So I have a philosophical question, curious on your input. So I've thought about this quite a bit. I think everybody's trying to figure out where AI fits in with our processes and everything. So I went through this practice of I was interviewing for a position for my company, and I put together a website, not on Airtable, but I wanted a chat widget. I wanted to build a chat component to it using AI. And so my first version, I had these questions of data that I wanted to collect from potential candidates. And so I had it all AI generated. So it was like a chat process. So you were chatting with the AI, and then the AI would go through and ask you these questions to collect it. And then it would update the database, all chat based. But what I found was people didn't really like that experience. And so I switched it to just being a standard form. It's if you know what you're collecting and you're I want to collect these, questions. I was struggling the experience, because I was thinking could Airtable create, an Omni form widget that allowed you to interact with your form via Omni to collect the information. And I don't know if that's the best approach. There's still a use case for a standard question and answer form. So it's where do we fit AI into some of these tried and true processes?
Well, now I'm thinking, can you make? I can see a world where someone makes a custom extension or something. You could just make your own website, whatever, that has agentic sort of conversational pattern to collect as much information, and then behind the scenes it's sort of like it's categorizing all the responses as though you were filling out a form. And then at the end, it gives you a pre-filled form link of like, here's what I've gained from this conversation, with it pre-filled with maybe many of the fields, like what's your age? That's probably easy to pre-fill, but like, what are your goals for this position? That might be a little bit harder. Like having that pre-filled, so it kind of guides someone through. If you had a very long, very complicated, very tedious form, I could see that being of some value, because then you still get confirmation of like, yeah, this is what I said, or kind of misinterpreted question 3. I'll go in and fix it.
Yeah.
I could see it potentially being useful for, like, if you have something that has like a long essay type answer question or something, like, and if you're really looking for specific pieces to be answered of that, like having an AI chat kind of to help guide the user along, be like, don't forget to add something about this. I don't know. I could see that being somewhat useful.
Yeah. I was just curious. It's kind of interesting how it'll be, because I think we'll see it where people use AI in places where you're like, that's not the right use case for AI, like that's overkill, or that makes it more complex or complicated.
And also, it's not free. So, I mean, if you're rolling in dough, I guess,
Right.
have at thee. But a lot of what I do, I'm kind of looking for efficiency. So if I can get it done with maybe a formula, I'll just use a formula.
Yeah, that's where I'm like the matching one, like that's where I'm a little hesitant to use the AI in all those places.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a nice to have, but is it worth the token usage? And yeah, think through that. So very cool. All right. Anything else we're showing in here?
I don't think so. I think that's like the high level of each of the different versions of this sort of experiment. And they all get you to the same place. But the one I think you're going to have the most mileage out of is the one that's built on the interface. Again, that does in fact, everybody who needs to fill this out would need an Airtable editor license. But again, kind of going back to some exploration, you could make like a custom interface, either code it yourself or use Omni to do so, that could create all of the line item like records visually. Like it won't store them in the base yet. And then when you're ready, I could see it going and pre-filling a form that looks like option number 2, where all of this, your item box, is formatted exactly the way that we think it should be. And then all you have to do is hit submit. So you could kind of marry the two together. If you didn't want to grant people edit access, you could kind of merge them together in that way.
Yeah, I wonder if people are already like going the custom interface route, where you could even have a list of read-only users with like a password and create like a login inside the custom interface, where they enter their email and a password, and then what user they are, and that as a cookie or whatever. So like you could do it all with read-only users. Probably not what Airtable wants, but I think it is possible.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have it released as an interface extension, but for the data layer extensions, my apps, you do log in, so I can see whether or not you're subscribed in my system. So like the idea of logging into the custom extension directly, that's not new, and I'm certain that carries over whether you're doing this or something similar to it or not. And yeah, you would know exactly who's logged in, and it is part of Airtable's SDK for custom extensions, both for the data layer and for interfaces. Even if you don't have your separate login component, as long as you're logged into Airtable to view the interface, whether you have an editor or viewer license, it knows who you are. So you technically don't have to do anything. You could just say hi, whoever you are, and then associate all of the actions with that email.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So they would log in as a read only, and then you would save it using, the admin. Well, when a custom interface saves like data to a record, is it always as the user interacting with it? Okay.
So
there has to be editor to update.
So what I would be suggesting is that, like, imagine everything in this interface was a custom interface. So you would be adding items to your cart, and then what this interface is doing is it's creating line item records in the base, which would require an editor license. But if it's a custom extension, these could be just stored in your browser's memory and not in the database, so that when you hit place order, rather than it being a form, it could send you to a pre-filled form that has all of the information from here filled in, and then you hit submit. So this form doesn't require you to have an editor license, and just sort of clicking around in a custom interface doesn't require an editor license either. You would be able to sort of
build that up,
invent it. Yeah.
Kind of like build the JSON and export it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or you could automatically post it to a webhook automation.
That's true. Yep.
So you could submit it that way.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody's building it that way.
I think that's a simple enough idea that I would want to test it, just because I probably, from a user experience standpoint, I would probably go with the trigger and automations webhook and send it a formatted JSON, just because then you don't have to open a new tab, and then there's no chance of someone messing this up and all of that. It's probably just a better user experience if you stay here. But yeah, there's a couple of things that you could do if you really, really wanted to circumvent, but then you have to create and maintain a custom extension, which could be good, could be bad if you've never done it before.
Yeah. Very cool. Awesome. Well, thank you, Camille, for showing this. Very useful. And let us know how you guys use forms and some of these tricks. We'd love to see them on the show. And we will be back next week. Next week, I will be off the grid, but we're going to make it where Camille and Allie will keep it going, the last episode of the season. And we've got other big news. In 2 days, my daughter's getting married, so I've got a wedding this week. So,
yay! Congratulations
for that. Thank you. Yeah, so we're adding to the family. We'll have a son-in-law here. So I'll be busy the rest of this week, and then going off the grid next week. So big week for us. Cool. Thank you, and we will see you next week on the show.